we've got to deal with any insecurity around calling people up to a higher place.
Absolutely agree. The leadership journey is actually about dealing with your motives and your insecurities so that you can, with integrity, mature the people that you're leading so that they can then be fully flowing in what God's called them to. That place of maturity actually takes courage. Hi everybody, and welcome to our podcast. When you hear the word confrontation, what happens in your heart? Do you go, oh no, I'm going to hurt someone? Or do you go, actually, this is a tool to grow and mature people? We're going to have a chat about confrontation, what it means, what it doesn't mean, and how to actually walk that journey with your people with integrity and love. Lynley.
Yeah, integrity and love in the same sentence as confrontation is like a minefield, isn't it? Because I think that when you say the word, confrontation, what does it raise in your heart? I think and feel things like fear. I feel and think thoughts of I have to somehow bring some bad news to somebody, or it's an adversarial conversation. So nothing positive sort of immediately rises in my head about confrontation.
No, I think it is quite an aggressive word, and I think for me, one of the first things that pops up in my brain or in my heart is, well, I'm going to confront that, but what if I'm wrong?
Yeah.
Right, and you sort of all this doubt starts to suddenly creep in around. Well, do I have a right to speak, or am I right to speak, or there's all this sort of kind of conversation that burbles away in there, and I think that's because we put confrontation in the place of, as you said, being adversarial with people, and it's like we're going to confront that. What I think we really mean as leaders is that we need to have a conversation with someone about this behaviour. We need to have a conversation with this person about their performance. We need to have a conversation with them about the way they delivered that prophetic word. We need to have, it's actually more about a corrective conversation. There are absolutely times where you have to confront, and there's been times where, you've had experience of preaching and somebody standing up in the front row and heckling you, right?
Yeah, I know.
So you have to confront that, right? Or somebody has to confront that. And, I've had experience in people just being out of order in meetings.
Yeah.
And you've got to go and deal with those things.
Yeah.
But 99% of the time when we're talking about confrontation, I think what we're really talking about is feedback and correction and guidance. And I find those words much more empowering than I'm going to confront them about their behaviour.
I think it's helpful to reframe, which is what you're explaining. You take the word confrontation and disempower it, and you put something else in place. You reframe it as, I'm going to give some constructive feedback. You're going to reframe it as, I'm bringing this person back into alignment with our culture and values, or back into alignment with who they're called to be. And I think that is a way more empowering and positive mindset, heart set for the person that needs to do the confrontation or the confronting. So we don't come with this aggressive vibe, because I think part of the problem is that we come to a so-called conversation where we feel like we need to confront, and we're all tied up in knots on the inside. So that atmosphere, that person's going to feel that atmosphere before we even open our mouth. Then we open our mouth, and because we're trying to prove a point, we come too hard, too fast, and too aggressive. And then, of course, they respond in a defensive way. And I think just dialing this thing way back and going, let's come alongside someone and realign them with what they're meant to be doing, or what they are, called to as a child of God. Realign them with the culture and values of the organisation.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really good perspective. It's like taking it from together we have this problem that we're both approaching, and it's not, not you and me.
It's not this.
But one of the learnings that I've had over the course of my time has been to actually realise that what's going on in my own heart that's given rise to the feeling of I've got to say something.
Yeah.
Is it because the expectations that you have for that person haven't been met, or have they, have they crossed one of your boundaries? Have they,
sure.
what's the dynamic there, and diffuse that before you come to the conversation around, I'm going to talk to you about this, and so that you don't come with the heat of frustration and disappointment and mismatched expectations, which, so if you can identify it, then you can, pop that bubble or balloon or diffuse it or process it and then come and have the conversation.
Yeah, so 100%. I think what you're saying is don't confront too early. Don't have that conversation too early. Identify and manage your own internal world.
Yeah.
First, before you have a refocusing or a realignment conversation.
I mean, it's in some ways it's exactly like in our marriage, right? We have what we call peacetime conversations.
That's right.
We don't, nothing good comes out of a wartime conversation, right? Or because then both of us are just kind of like, rah,
Yeah.
But if we can process our own feelings and emotions, and then in a time of when we're feeling peaceful, then we have the conversation. Then that's been a way more productive way forward for us. So I think it kind of translates into your team. Don't have the conversation when you're all head up about it.
Yeah.
It's let that die down, simmer away, and then have the conversation. One of the things I wanted to talk about really was particularly around expectations, because a lot of the conversations that we've had as leaders have been around our volunteer people haven't met our expectations, or our staff haven't met expectations, but we've also realised that we've been really quite poor at setting out what those expectations actually are. So we've got all these unmet expectations or unspoken expectations in our brain that the team don't know about, and then they don't meet them, and then we get frustrated.
Yeah.
So
yet we never told them those expectations were there in the first place.
That's right.
Yeah. So
So I think as a learning tool of late, we've gotten much clearer with saying this is what this role is about, and we setting the expectations, and so there's clarity. And that's where that whole that phrase, clarity is kindness, has come from.
That's right. And I 100% agree that if I reflect back on the teams over the last 30 years that we've had, when there's been clear job descriptions, role descriptions, expectations are set, people know what they're doing, it is way easier to hold them to be accountable to that and to have a conversation where you're like, actually, part of your role is this, and I'm noticing that, you're not showing up, you're not turning up, can we have a conversation about that? Let us know what's going on. And they know that is an expectation of their role that's already on paper.
Yeah, well, if they've signed up to that at the beginning, when they drift, it's a much easier conversation because you've already set the expectation, weeks, months, years ago, and now it's kind of, well, what's going on? We're drifting from what we've agreed. So, what's going on at home, or going on in your private life, or going on that's actually causing you not to be able to fulfill these expectations. And it's a much more constructive, objective conversation than berating someone because they haven't met your unspoken expectation.
Yeah, that's right. And just going back to what you said, even in our marriage, it's much easier to process once we're not in fight, flight, war mode.
Not that we're in war mode very often.
No, but we were a few days ago.
Yes.
And I had to take half a day to find out what was going on inside my own mind and heart, and why I was having a visceral reaction to something that had happened. You came to check in with me like, are we good? And like, no, I don't want to talk about it right now. But then when I had nailed it for myself, I was able to come back to you and go, this is what happened. This is what it keyed into. That's why it was such a visceral reaction. This is what I need from you. Yeah. And I think that even though it was a few hours or half a day, it is so important to, when you're trying to confront something in someone's behaviour, or you are expressing an unmet need, don't do that when you're like raging.
Yeah.
So when we translate that to our leadership, don't have a conversation when you're raging.
No.
Just, it's going to be all bad.
All bad. And then you'll end up apologising, and the very thing that you actually wanted to talk about's lost because you just handled it so poorly.
And now you're the one who has to apologise and repent.
Yeah.
And now it's all about you. And you've lost your platform to hold someone accountable for their behaviour.
Yeah. Nothing good comes out of that.
Nothing good. And I'm the other thing I wanted to say about this is, as a master coach, one of the skills we learn in training is with our clients is to open lines of inquiry that are such a big window, in someone's life. You're opening up a window in someone's life through a gentle line of inquiry.
Yeah.
It is so helpful to have that skill in leadership, because when you suspect that they've done something wrong, when you suspect that your team is not performing, or they've actually done something in their role that is blatantly out of line, you can come with the coach approach to confrontation through asking a line of inquiry. And that then starts to give you as a leader way more information than you currently have to then address the issue, right? Where often we are perceiving, or we're suspicious of something, or maybe we have hard written evidence, or somebody said this and someone told me this and they said that and blah, 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 and we have secondhand information. So we're about to confront someone with secondhand information, which is highly dangerous.
And wrong.
I hear you did X, Y, and Z. Well, actually, it wasn't like that. Oh, really? Oh, okay. So now you look like an idiot as a leader.
You're on the back foot already.
You're on the back foot. So when we come with a coach approach to confrontation, a wise way to do it is to open a line of inquiry, which can sound like, hey, I had a conversation with this person the other day and they brought up that you handled something quite badly in a meeting the other day. Their impression was this. Tell me what was going on for you. What do you want to share about that? Tell me about this situation from your perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's that kind of it's a kinder, softer entry, which doesn't necessarily. Well, it might still put the person on the defensive, but it's not an attack.
It's not an attack.
And I think it reminds me actually of us, I think I might have talked about this on a previous podcast, but when earlier on in my management career, had an underperforming staff member who started out really, really well, but then ended up, sort of falling off a cliff with their performance. And, they were close to being fired. But when I used that kind of line of inquiry, sort of unconsciously, I didn't have language for it at that point in time, but I just started inquiring about what was going on in his life, and it took a while for him to actually open up, but eventually he opened up about some personal things that were happening with his family that were actually a massive burden and weight that he was struggling to carry, and that was bleeding over into his his work life. So it wasn't that he was actually wanting to perform badly, he just couldn't cope with his personal life and his work life at that point in time. And so we were able to go, okay, well, what support can we put around you as you journey through this season, right? Whereas, if I just gone in and go, you're performing badly, you're fired, or just attacked his work performance, I don't think we would have ever actually got to the root or the reason why it was happening. And, it would have been a negative outcome for him. And because he was an incumbent person who was actually doing quite a good job, had great capability.
Yeah, well, he would have lost.
Would have been a bad outcome for the company as well, right? So I think, coming in with that line of inquiry is a really, really essential leadership skill that if you don't know it, if you don't know how to open lines of inquiry, then that's a skill we would highly recommend that you go and learn.
Or call me and I'll teach you.
Or call Lynley and, and maybe we'll do a training on it.
Yeah, that might be a really good idea, because I have found that has saved my bacon, so to speak, a number of times only, over and over, because you come with a motivation of humility and openness, as opposed to, I've already decided and I'm just going to pummel you with questions until you actually admit that you did that wrong. And I remember once, this is way back in our years in Toronto, there was a staff member that made a massive mistake, and it was pretty public, and I had to do the confrontation with him. And I remember sitting down, and the Spirit of the Lord just gave me a line of inquiry, just dropped it into my heart. I said to this person, when you did that, what was in your heart at the time that moved you to act and speak in that way? And it really disarmed the whole conversation to a place of her being able to reflect.
Yeah.
Okay, this is actually about what's going on inside my heart that motivated me to speak in a certain way and act in a certain way. So you're dropping the whole conversation into a deeper place, as opposed to your behavior was terrible, you cannot speak to people like that, you cannot take that kind of action, that's wrong, smack, right?
Yeah.
You're going, this has happened. Now, as a leader, I want to know, and I want to talk with you, what was going on in your heart. And it gives them this ability you create space as a leader to allow some self-reflection. Well, we got to the root issue pretty quickly, and they were able to go, man, I was motivated by, don't need to actually say it on the podcast, but they got clear on what was driving that bad behavior.
Yeah.
So it was a great conversation. It was a hard conversation. And then because they realized they were at fault, they easily could apologize. They easily could right a wrong. They easily could take the steps to, okay, I need to get some transformation in that area. I need to reframe that in my own heart. As opposed to a leader who comes along and observes bad behavior and just addresses the behavior.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that comes with a lot of assumption of, why people did that. We observe something, and from our experience we kind of go, well, they must have this in their heart, or they must have this motive, or they must, we kind of assume that. So we come to the conversation from a place of assumption as opposed to inquiry, and our assumptions can be horribly off. Horribly off.
Especially if we're prophetic and discerning. So we discern the hearts of man in our opinions. So we can be suspicious of motives and just label something that's controlling. You want to control, you want to manipulate, you want to
promote your agenda. Or
you want to promote your agenda, and that's an assumption. I've had to really work on that because I'm really discerning. That's one of my highest gifts, right? Yeah. But man, the Lord has put me in the fiery furnace around my discernment and my assumptions. So even in our discernment, that spiritual overlay that we put on our leadership, we have to open lines of inquiry.
Yeah, and I think even if your discernment is actually bang on, it may still be that motive that you've discerned, or that may still be hidden from the person that you're talking to, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to lead them or create space where the Holy Spirit can speak to them to bring them to that conclusion. Because most often people aren't sitting there going, my motive is this, therefore I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Right? They're not.
That's not a cognitive
no.
awareness thing. No.
I'd like to shift gears a little bit and just go back to a comment I made around clarity is kindness. Because I've noticed about our leadership, or my leadership over in later years, I've gotten braver and more courageous about saying what I really mean, and not trying to, well, they'll get the hint, or I can't really say what I feel or what I think because they may be upset, or they may be hurt, or they may be offended, or, and so we dance around the issue and never actually really say it. And then the person still doesn't get the understanding that the expectations aren't being met, or whatever the issue happens to be. And so nothing changes. And so you end up as a leader, and I've been there. It's like, well, I've spoken to them 3 or 4 times about this, and they still haven't got it.
You sugared the pill.
Yeah. And it's like, well, if I actually and honestly reflect on those conversations that I had, I wasn't actually being truthful. I wasn't speaking the truth in love. I wasn't actually being clear, and so that's not, and I've come to the place of being, well, that actually wasn't kind, because they're sitting there. People feel that they're not meeting expectations, or they're feeling, that they're not measuring up, or they're not, you're displeased or something. The teams feel that from their leaders, right? And so you have a conversation and they go, well, that was a bit weird. I'm not really quite sure what I was doing wrong, but I'm clearly doing something wrong. And so I think there's a place for actually really articulating what it is that you're talking about.
Yeah. Don't be waffly.
Don't be waffly, and just even in my explanation right now, there's all waffly, right?
Yeah, and I'm noticing that. I was just going to say that. How interesting, something that you're trying to make a point about and bring clarity to, but you're waffling. And so my question to you is, and our audiences are probably laughing at this moment, but my question to you is, what's going on in your heart in this moment about bringing truth with clarity?
Yeah, well, it's a very good question, and we're going to have a coaching moment right now. But I think it's, as much as I believe in, clarity is kindness, and wanting to be, and I have noticed that I'm getting clearer. It's still a courageous conversation.
Courage, yeah.
And it's still am I right to have this conversation? If I'm really sure of my ground, then I don't really have too many problems with having a conversation with someone. But if I'm a bit unsure, or, and that's where I think, the line of inquiry thing is actually really helpful, because it's not a head-to-head, it's a side-to-side kind of conversation. But I think what's going on with me, and while I'm hedging and waffling around it, is actually a little bit around, well, am I sure of my ground here?
Yeah, so the learning is in the topic of confrontation, and you're not sure of your ground, the best tactic to take would be
a line of inquiry.
And you're pretty safe if you're just asking a question without coming with an assumption.
Yeah, that's right. And Steve Long says it, that the most important character trait of a leader is courage.
I love Steve Long. I think he's got leadership wisdom that flows out of him. Yeah.
Yeah. He's an awesome leader. And I think but you, as a leader, you have to have the courage. I have to have the courage to actually set out what is expected in the front end. This is what we're talking about. When you're signing up to this is what we mean. And we've had a conversation with a ministry that we're talking with about framing up what leadership expectations look like. When we ask you to be a part of our leadership team, this is how we expect you to behave.
Yeah.
Because then there's no ambiguity around what that looks like, and people get to say, well, I can sign up to that, or I don't sign up to that.
Yeah.
And I think part of the hesitancy to be clear is this fear, particularly with volunteer teams, that if I set an expectation and they don't want to commit to that expectation, then they'll deselect, and then I won't have my volunteer anymore. Yeah. But I need my volunteer, so
I'm going to make it really easy.
Easy for them to volunteer, and but that just breeds frustration when they just do what they do.
And you're tearing your hair out.
Because they're not meeting your expectation that you never told them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, welcome to leadership, right? The avoidance to call people up is just a fear of people not liking your leadership.
Yeah.
And I think a lot, especially in the healthy leadership space and the culture that we're building around empowering leaders, I really sense that we've got to deal with any insecurity around calling people up to a higher place.
Absolutely agree. The leadership journey is actually about dealing with your motives and your insecurities and your, so that you can, with integrity, mature the people that you're leading to a place of maturity so that they can then be fully flowing in what God's called them to. Our job as leaders is to mature the body. Ephesians 4 is about actually maturing people into a place of unity. That place of maturity actually takes courage. As leaders, we want leaders to actually be courageous and have conversations around where the mismatched expectations are and take steps to set the expectations at the front end so that when you're actually having a conversation, it's not a surprise to anyone, and come in from a line of inquiry.
Yeah, come in from a line of inquiry. Do not let emotions drive the timing of that conversation. Let wisdom drive the timing of the conversation. Don't wait too long. Don't avoid. Avoidance is not kindness.
Avoidance is not kindness. Yeah.
And don't assume. The word confrontation can be reframed to something that's not as aggressive, and it's necessary to do, but it's not this big emotional, tense, frightening moment in a leader's life. It doesn't have to be that.
And I think as you say that, we've used the phrase in this conversation already about courageous conversations. I think, yes, it takes courage, but to frame something as a confrontation or a courageous conversation, it kind of puts it out there.
Yeah.
Beyond you. It's like something you've got to reach up to
or build yourself up to.
And I think what I really want leaders to do is actually, it's not about that. If you just are willing to inquire and about somebody's behaviour or performance or what they're doing or saying, and come alongside people just as a natural flow of who you are as a leader. Yes, it's courageous, but let's not call it a courageous conversation or a confrontation. Let's just say, this is how I'm coming alongside you in kindness and love to help mature you in your walk.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Amen.
That's good.